Hello, this is Devin Poe speaking, and I'm going to be going through the final presentation that we have here. I'm going to read one by one each point as we get to each point, and then I'm going to be explaining to you what they each mean or the requirements for each. So the first one is to explain the difference between static class variables and a class non-static instance variable. Give examples of code showing how to reference and call a static function versus a non-static function. So the first part of this is basically, well, one is preceded by the keyword static, and while they both essentially do the same thing, the biggest difference is when they are created. One is created when the class is loaded, while the other is created whenever an instance of the class is created. So let's go ahead and open up I'll go ahead and show you an example of that. So the first example that I have for you of a non-static instance variable is going to be the string menu inputs that we have here. This basically is assigning or creating a new string of menu items and assigning it to inputs, and then it goes ahead and goes through the rest of the logic there. But what we're focusing on here is the actual class variable. And what's going to be happening here is that when it's created in memory, it's created basically when the class is created, or when the instance of the class is created, it'll go ahead and create this. Now, the only other one that I have that's really a static variable, or the only example that I was able to find was right here. I know this isn't a really good example of it, but it is technically an example of it. But it's a static print writer console equals Oregon Trail dot get out file. Anyways, the difference is this will be created in memory only once. It's kind of the difference between creating a new instance of something every single time that you need to use it, or creating an instance once and then going back and recalling to the same instance of the thing that you have created. So right here in our string menu item inputs, I know this is a different instance of it. Basically what it's doing is it's creating it only once in memory. It's calling to it when it needs it, or when it's created, and then it's going to be the same when it's recalled to, if it's recalled to in this same class here. What's a good way to explain the difference between these two? Basically, if I'm going to come back to this item, it's always going to be the same item, and if we change it to something, for example, if it's changed to an actual object, let's say the object is, or an actual value, which is 1, when we call back to it, or if we change it to 1 or 2, when we call back to it, it's going to be 2. It's going to have that same position, or that same value. But when we come back to our error view here, every single time we call this, if it is 1 and we set it equal to 2, when we call back to it, it's going to be 1 again. It's not going to retain the value that we had over before. It needs to be created again. Does that make sense? Second point is to demonstrate through examples of your program your understanding of when to use an array versus an array list versus an enum, or as I know the professor likes to call it, just an array, a list, and an enum. Anyways, well, basically they're all lists, but the difference is how long they are and how they are added to. An array allows you to, dynamically change the items that are in the array. They all should be the same data type in the array. While an array list, or just a list, lets you dynamically add and remove objects from the list at runtime. So while the array can take in simple values such as integers and booleans, everything in an array list must be converted to an object first. An enum is different than the other two, though, in that it lets you create a fixed length of constants. However, everything in an enum stays the same and cannot be changed. Also, instead of referencing by index, they are referenced by whatever their name is. So let's go ahead and start with our enum. So the first enum we have is right here, and it's just an enum created with different names of items, and basically every single one of these items, well, it doesn't have a value necessarily assigned to it right now. It has a position, and the position is the name, and that's all it is right now. But then we take that and we turn it into an array down here, or we use the enum and insert it into the array to create different values associated with each position or each thing in the enum class. So each axle now has, or we can, inside of each axle enum value, associate more values with that axle. So we can have it set type store, set description axle, quantity in stock 10, required amount 1, cost 10. We can have all these different things associated with it, even though they aren't actually what it is, or the position inside of it is just axle, inside of the enum rather. Now, in addition to that, something that I kind of wanted to point out was that when it creates an array for the axle or for the wheels or for the tongues, it's created a new array for every single one. Whenever you go to access the axles or the wheels, you have an entirely new array for each one, and that array is storing the simple values that are associated with it, but at the same time, that's all it is. It just has those simple values associated with it, because inside of the enum, it's not, what am I trying to point out here? What I'm trying to point out is that they're not the same thing. There's definitely a separation between what an enum is and what this array list is. One is just like a pointer that points to the other, though, and we can access it through the keyword axles or wheels. So part of the point that I also want to re-emphasize with an enum is you'll notice here that the order is different than it was before, and that's because the order doesn't necessarily matter inside of an enum. It's all about what the key name is, and it understands the key name of it, and that's what links it to it is by the name. So next we're going to go over the array list. And right here, this is how you create an array list. You do array list, and then inside of this, the less than and greater than symbol, you actually have the name of it. And then, just like we instantiate anything else, we're instantiating the actors class. But this time, we're doing it by getting the gamecontrol.createActorsList. Now, this links down to down here. That is a list that is referencing. Once again, it's referencing our enum class, but it's referencing through an array list this time. So this time, when we need to, we can add to or take away from the actors, and that's because generally the family list will also be part of the family list will also be part of the actors class. So inside of enum, if we need to add or take away from it, we can go ahead and do that. Demonstrate through examples of code that you've written for one of your individual assignments your understanding of how to use the basic for statement and index to go through and access each element stored in the array or array list. So I know this says to demonstrate it through our own code, I believe it was, but I can't find any examples of our own code that go through it. I mean, I could write it down for you real quick and show you what it means, but essentially this is kind of a good example of what we're looking for, because it sets it equal to 0 and then for 0. How do you say this without just saying exactly what's written here? For the integer column, which is equal to 0, so for this new integer which equals 0, and column is less than the length of the rows, it's going to go ahead and increment the columns. And so this is, once again, something that you had written, Professor, I believe. But it's a good example because this will go through and run through everything that it needs to, and as it goes through, it'll go ahead and increment the column, make it bigger, and then go through and run through it again until it reaches the entire dot length. Another example of how to go through it is, it's not exactly an example, but it kind of is just the case statement. And the case statement will go through and check for it, well, in this case, what your input is and whether it's equal to one of these. And once it has one of these, it goes ahead and executes whatever's associated with the value that you inputted, and then basically just calls to it. So it kind of goes through all of them, but at the same time, I know it's not the same and it's not exactly what we're looking for, but I just don't have any personal examples of it. But I mean, it's simple. You just need to or you make like total equals 0, and then something like, let's see, for integer I equals 0, and then let's see, I less than total dot length I plus plus, and that's basically the for loop on how to go through it. Why did I do brackets? And then you can do something like total plus equals what the? I tapped insert and it did that. Oh, I did total over here. I meant times. But, and then you would just have like return total. And I don't know exactly what the point of this exercise is, except for that's essentially how you would go through it with a for loop. How you would go through every single item one by one in a for loop that you have in your array. Next is to demonstrate through examples of code that you have written for one of your individual assignments your understanding on how to throw, propagate, and catch custom runtimes errors in your program. This one's pretty easy. It's just like, well, it's just like calling to anything else. It just would go through it and, let's pull up the example before. Yeah, so this one, for example, is the static void to move actors to starting location using the parameters of map and map. And then throws a map control exception, and then moves player to 0, 0. Now that throws is basically just telling it to go and get the map control exception if it needs it, if it ever ends up being 0, 0. Or if it's ever null, for example, map equals null right here, it's going to once again throw the map control exception and say invalid map cannot be null. There's no reason why it should ever be null because our game isn't an explore the map, it's a go through the map kind of linearly, but anyways. It's basically just like any other type of if statement. It's kind of gonna run through it, and if the parameters are what it's looking for, it's gonna go ahead and throw the map control exception, which I'll show you our map control exception that we have down here. It's going to now all of this I don't understand completely. It's just the pseudocode, or no, not the pseudocode, the Unicode for what we need in order to actually throw these map control exceptions. But the concept's the same, like I was saying. It's kind of like an if statement of where it looks for parameters, if the parameters match what it's looking for, it goes ahead and throws this map control exception, or just accesses it and does it. Explain when and why a character stream class should be used versus a byte stream class to read and write data to a file. Well, this one seems kind of obvious, but byte streams access files byte by byte, while character streams files access character by character. Let me start over. This one seems kind of obvious, but byte streams access files byte by byte, while character streams read files or write files character by character. And since 1, we're looking for slightly larger files, and 2, aren't processing something like raw data from a server, or binary code or stuff like that, we use character streams as we want it to write to a text file, and read from a text file, because it'll understand what's in the text file a little bit better. But at the same time, if we ever want to go back to our files, and we as the programmer might understand what it's saying when we click on it, instead of saying something like 100101 for the letter B, it's just going to have the letter B, E, A, R, whatever, and it's going to be something that we can actually read without having to translate it, which is also good for when you want to save files or save things inside your files. We're not doing an extra step of encoding or decoding or whatever to throw it into a byte by byte thing. We're just throwing the letters in there and then reading the letters directly back, and then we can go ahead and access what we need to. Just like when we did for our new log file.txt, we don't want it to say something other than a log file.txt. I mean, we very simply want log file.txt here. So it's going to go ahead and print out something with those letters as opposed to the bytes. Does that make sense? Walk through an example of code that you have written for one of your individual assignments and demonstrate your understanding of how to write character data to an external file. I think the only really good example I have here, and I kind of went over it already, is right here when we did the Oregon Trail, and we're looking to just go ahead and print things out to the file. Oh, I guess, one second. Here we are in our save game view. We had the same kind of thing where we're looking to print out, not an error message, but we're looking to print the file was saved to inputs, and we want the inputs to be, not that is empty, but whatever the character, the user input into it. So enter the file name for the game that you want to save, otherwise press Q to exit this view. So it's going to go ahead and print out the message for someone to that message so that they can enter in a personal name for the save game and then return to it. And once again, this is in Unicode, or basically characters, because we don't want the user to type in my game and it end up spitting out 1,000 different bytes of 1001 or whatever. We want them to be able to locate it by whatever they inputted, so it needs to be a character stream that they had. That kind of goes over both the last step and this step together. But now the last one is just to demonstrate the fully implemented game. We'll make sure everything's saved first. I don't know if that was a good idea. I don't know if I touched something that I shouldn't have. But anyways, hit play, and it prints out a little friendly message for us. Hello and welcome to our Oregon Trail game. Your goal in this game will be to safely make it to Oregon. We hope you die a lot. Please enter in your character's name. I always just enter in Bob because it's easy. And it says, hello Bob and welcome to the Oregon Trail. This is the main menu. Type the letter corresponding to the option or action you want to take. And we want to start a new game, so we're going to press N. and here's the game menu. Type the letter corresponding to the option action you want to take. Now, initially, it should take you to the menu shop, or menu shop? Oh my gosh, I can't talk today. It should take you to the item shop, or the general store, where you would buy your items. However, we don't have that set up, and we just have it go straight into the game, which is fine. It's just not a fully implemented game, but if we hit V, we can see our map, and it shows where we are on the map. If we type in the next one, which is move, it'll give us another little menu. Oh, I guess I didn't realize it still calls the move method in the move view. But anyways, this is the move menu. Type the word corresponding to the speed you want to travel at. Slow, set your pace to slow. Normal, set your pace to normal. And fast, set your pace to fast. Rest, you won't move, but instead rest for a day. And then press E to exit. I'll show you that that does work if we press E. Let's go ahead and see the map again, and then we're going to move, and we're going to move fast. And then we're going to look at the map again, and it has moved us in the map. But before we jump there, I forgot to mention that every time you move, it'll say you have set your speed to fast. Your current health is now 70, which when we started out, it was 100. So you have successfully moved to Mount, I don't know, I looked that up. I don't know how to pronounce it though, but anyways, the next part is move, and then if we say fast again, we can see on our map where we went and where we've been, but now it's going to read out your current health is 40. You have set your pace to fast, your current health is 40. You have successfully moved to Miller's Hollow. Now you're going to see here, and I'm just going to go through it to kind of show that it does work. If we type in fast again, and then if we move and we go fast again, it's going to say you have 0 HP, you have died, you have fallen ill, you have currently have -20. It'll say you have fallen ill right up here too, because when we hit 10, it's so long as it's 20 or less. Anyways, you have 0 HP, you have died, and you have successfully moved to Fort Kearney. I guess I could have made it so it doesn't print out that, but it's going to complete the game right there. Now, so in order to actually move through the game, I'm just going to do this real quick. You have to move, but then you have to also rest. And now that I think about it, you can get more than 100 health if you wanted, but so this is where we are right now. We're just resting to get more health, and then we move and we go fast. Move and we go fast. And your current health is 160. You have successfully made it to Zion. And the game is complete because we have moved through everything and reached all the way to the end to Zion. Well, I wish I had hit V to show you on the map all the different places that we had moved. But you can see that it's actually showing the places where we moved to and where we currently were as it would go through. And the way I set it up is that even though you move fast, it just goes down. It doesn't move necessarily 3 ahead, it just moves down to the next row every time you do that. But anyways, it's not the best game and it's not the most perfect game, but it is there and it does run, which is, I don't know if you knew this is my second time taking the class, and it was better than last year when I made my game, which could do all the different menu views but couldn't move. Thank you for your time. If you have any trouble viewing this video, please let me know immediately. I'll send you a message as well, because my last teacher didn't see my video and gave me a 0 for it, and which is why I'm taking the class again. So yeah, please let me know. Thank you. Have a good day.